General Motors may have ruled the roads in the 1960s, but not every car rolling off its assembly lines was a winner. Beneath the muscle and prestige were serious engineering flops, rushed designs, and outright mechanical disasters. From underpowered fleet cars to dangerously unstable performance models, here are 30 of the worst GM cars of the 60s to ever hit the streets. Kickstarting the countdown at number 30 is the 1960 Chevrolet Corvair. The 1960 to 1961 Chevrolet Corvair was designed to be GM's American response to the Volkswagen Beetle, with a rear-mounted air-cooled engine aimed at the compact car market. Unfortunately, it quickly became notorious for serious handling issues that made it a death trap on wheels. Ralph Nader's book, Unsafe at Any Speed, famously brought these flaws into the spotlight, turning the Corvair into a public relations disaster. One of the biggest issues was the Corvair's swing axle rear suspension. This design caused extreme oversteer, meaning the rear end would easily break loose, leaving drivers with little control, especially in emergency maneuvers. Adding to this, the lack of front anti-roll bar made matters worse, causing the car to flip over in sudden turns or lane changes. The Corvair was also given a recommendation for dangerously low tire pressures, 15 psi in the front and 26 psi in the rear, contributing to its unstable handling and further increasing the risk of accidents. But the issues didn't stop there. Unlike most cars of the time, the Corvair didn't offer any significant safety features, such as a proper crash protection. This made the car even more dangerous, as it lacked the necessary structural integrity to protect occupants in the event of an accident. Furthermore, GM's attempt to discredit Ralph Nader only worsened the situation. As lawsuits piled up and settlements reached millions, the Corvair's reputation as a safety hazard was sealed. While it's now viewed as a collector's item, the Chevy Corvair is far from a practical choice for a classic car enthusiast. Prices for a rough model can start under $5,000, while fully restored ones can fetch anywhere between $15,000 to $25,000. However, if you're after a classic car that's reliable and safe to drive, the Corvair is best left in the history books. Next up, at number 29, is the 1962 Oldsmobile F85 Jetfire. It was the first production car to come with a turbocharged engine. Sounds exciting, right? Unfortunately, the turbocharged revolution Oldsmobile hoped to kick off quickly turned into a nightmare. The Jetfire's turbocharged 3.5-liter V8 had a unique setup involving a turbo rocket fluid, a mix of methanol and water that owners were supposed to refill to prevent engine failure. The problem? Most owners never topped it off, and when the fluid ran out, the turbo would fry, leading to a catastrophic engine failures. The engine wasn't just hard to maintain, it was also underpowered and inconsistent. With just 215 horsepower from a V8, the performance was lackluster. The car barely kept up with its non-turbo rivals, like the Chevrolet Corvette and Pontiac Tempest, which offered more reliable and straightforward performance. Despite the cool factor of a turbocharged engine, the F85 Jetfire didn't deliver on speed, and its unique turbo system ended up being a mechanical nightmare. To make matters worse, GM had to recall most of the Jetfires due to the turbo's constant failure. Many owners had their turbocharged engines replaced with conventional V8s, which removed the unique selling point of the car altogether. After these failures, GM's attempt to continue turbocharging was abandoned for the next 2 decades. Besides the turbo issues, the Jetfire also suffered from poor fuel economy and a lack of reliability, which made it hard for buyers to embrace it as a performance car. As a result, sales plummeted, and Oldsmobile was forced to discontinue the model after just 3 years. if you're thinking about picking up a 61 to 63 Oldsmobile F85 Jetfire, be aware that this turbocharged disaster is more of a collector's curiosity than a usable classic. Coming in the number 28 position is the 1963 Pontiac Tempest. It made waves as a compact car with a unique drivetrain setup. Instead of the usual solid axle or conventional driveshaft, Pontiac introduced a rope drive flexible driveshaft, which was supposed to offer smoother power delivery. In practice, it caused relentless mechanical issues, leading to constant vibration and drivetrain failures. Owners soon found themselves battling shaking, uncomfortable rides, and frequent breakdowns. On top of that, the Tempest's weight distribution was a disaster. With a small, underpowered 3.2-liter four-cylinder engine paired to a rear-mounted transmission, the car's handling was unpredictable and downright dangerous. The rear-heavy setup caused the car to oversteer and became a nightmare for drivers who tried to push the car through corners. The result was a car that was neither fun to drive nor practical for everyday use. Adding insult to injury, the engine itself was a major letdown. Pontiac's decision to use a 3.2-liter four-cylinder, which was essentially half of a V8, led to poor performance. The engine was rough-running, constantly stalled, and underpowered, leaving drivers frustrated with its lack of smoothness. This was a stark contrast to its competitors, which offered better performance and reliability. Pontiac quickly realized that the Tempest drivetrain and performance flaws were too significant to fix in the long term. So after just 3 years, the company pulled the plug on the original setup and redesigned the entire system for the 1964 model year. If you're looking at a 1961 to 1963 Pontiac Tempest, be prepared for an unreliable ride with limited performance. While it was a bold experiment, the Tempest failed to deliver on its promises and remains more of a mechanical oddity than a classic car worth restoring. Number 27 is the 1963 Buick Special Skylark. It was supposed to be a breakthrough for GM, showcasing the company's first all-aluminum V8. However, it became one of the most unreliable engines of the era. The lightweight 215 cubic inch V8 was a great idea in theory, but in practice, it was an engineering disaster. Overheating was the biggest problem, as the aluminum block and heads expanded at different rates, causing constant gasket failures. Drivers were left dealing with blown head gaskets, warped heads, and endless cooling system issues. Oil leaks were another nightmare. The Skylark's engine seemed incapable of holding on to its oil, constantly seeping from gaskets and seals no matter how well it was maintained. Mechanics hated working on it because of the fragile aluminum construction, which made simple repairs a nightmare. Many owners simply gave up and swapped in a different engine or scrapped the car altogether. Corrosion was the final nail in the coffin. Aluminum was still a new material for American production cars, and GM hadn't perfected the metallurgy. Internal corrosion was rampant, leading to premature engine failure. While Rover later bought the rights to the engine and improved it, Buick's version remained a short-lived mechanical headache. Beyond the engine issues, the Special Skylark wasn't particularly fast or exciting to drive. With 190 to 200 horsepower, it was decent for its time, but constant mechanical problems overshadowed any performance potential. While its competitors like Ford Fairlane and Pontiac Tempest were proving to be more reliable choices, the Skylark's reputation nosedived. GM quietly abandoned the aluminum V8 after 1963, replacing it with cast iron engines that were far more durable. The 62 to 63 Buick Special Skylark might look like an interesting piece of history, but owning one means dealing with endless overheating, oil leaks, and expensive repairs. Sliding in at number 26 is the 1969 Buick Wildcat 430. It was supposed to be the perfect blend of performance and luxury, but it failed at both. At nearly 4,300 pounds, it was too heavy to be a serious muscle car, and despite Buick's efforts, it lacked the refinement expected from a true luxury cruiser. Stuck between identities, it never found a loyal following and faded into obscurity. Under the hood, the 430 cubic inch V8 looked promising, with 360 horsepower and 475 foot-pounds of torque, but gearing and weight killed any real performance potential. The Wildcat had a sluggish 0 to 60 time of around 7 seconds, which wasn't terrible. But in an era of fire-breathing muscle cars, it wasn't nearly enough. The quarter mile took over 15 seconds, making it slower than smaller, lighter cars with similar power. Handling was even worse. Buick's overboosted power steering had zero road feel, and the soft suspension turned the Wildcat into a floating barge. Body roll was excessive, and pushing it hard into corners felt like a losing battle against physics. It was built for straight-line cruising, but even then, it lacked the refinement expected from a proper luxury car. Sales struggled because it didn't have a clear market. Muscle car buyers went for the GS 400 or Chevel SS, while those looking for luxury opted for the Riviera or Electra. The Wildcat sat awkwardly in between, offering neither the prestige nor the raw performance to justify its existence. By 1970, Buick pulled the plug on the Wildcat, replacing it with a Centurion, a car that at least knew what it wanted to be. So the 69 Wildcat 430 wasn't a terrible car, but it never had an identity strong enough to stand out in GM's crowded lineup. Next, at number 25 is the 1961 Pontiac Ventura. It had the makings of a great full-size cruiser, clean styling, a roomy interior, and a lineup of solid V8s. But one major flaw turned it into a nightmare: the Slim Jim Hydromatic transmission. This was GM's attempt at a lightweight, space-saving automatic, but it ended up being one of the worst transmissions ever put into a car. The Slim Jim was notorious for rough shifting, hesitation, and excessive slippage. Instead of a smooth, predictable gear change, drivers got jerky, delayed shifts that made the car feel like it was struggling to keep up with itself. The internals were weak, leading to early failure, and the unit was prone to overheating, especially under hard acceleration. Fluid leaks were common, often leaving owners stranded with a slipping or completely dead transmission. Even routine maintenance was a headache. The Slim Jim required precise band adjustments to keep it functioning properly. But most mechanics either refused to work on them or simply couldn't fix the problems. Many owners ditched the factory transmission entirely, swapping in an older, more reliable Hydromatic just to keep the car drivable. The Slim Jim disaster overshadowed what could have been a solid full-size Pontiac. Buyers looking for a powerful cruiser often went with a Catalina or Bonneville instead, both of which could be optioned with more dependable Roto-Hydromatic. The Ventura's styling and performance weren't enough to make up for the transmission woes, and by 1962, Pontiac abandoned the Slim Jim for a better design. The 1960-61 Ventura isn't the worst car Pontiac ever built, but its reputation was forever tarnished by a transmission so unreliable that it made even the most diehard GM fans think twice. In the number 24 position, we have the 1964 to 1966 Chevrolet Chevel 230 or 250. The 64 to 66 Chevrolet Chevel had all the makings of a muscle car legend, except when it was saddled with the anemic 230 or 250 cubic inch straight-six engines. While V8 powered Chevels were tearing up the streets, these base models were struggling to keep up with traffic. The straight-six engines were underwhelming at best. The 230 cubic inch version made a measly 140 horsepower, while the 250 fared only slightly better at 155 horsepower. In an era where performance was king, these numbers were embarrassing. Acceleration was sluggish, with quarter-mile times well beyond the 18-second mark. Even economy cars of the time had more pep. The lack of power was made worse by a 3-speed manual or a 2-speed Power Glide automatic, neither of which helped the car feel any quicker. Reliability wasn't much better. The six-cylinder engine suffered poor oil circulation, leading to premature wear on the camshaft and lifters. Valve issues were common, with excessive wear and carbon buildup causing misfires and rough idling. Overheating plagued these models, especially in warmer climates, thanks to inefficient cooling system design. Timing chains were another weak point. Stretch chains led to erratic ignition timing, further robbing what little power the engine had. The weak performance and mechanical headaches meant the six-cylinder Chevels were largely forgotten. Buyers looking for an affordable midsize car had better options, while those craving power simply went for a V8. The Chevel itself became a muscle car icon, but the six-cylinder versions never earned the same respect. Even in the classic car market, they remain overshadowed, with enthusiasts largely ignoring them in favor of their big block and small block siblings. Number 23, it's the 1967 Cadillac El Dorado. It was a bold experiment, Cadillac's first front-wheel drive luxury coupe. On paper, it was revolutionary. In reality, it was a mechanical headache that never lived up to its promise. Under the hood was a monstrous 429 cubic inch V8 making 340 horsepower, sending power to the front wheels through GM's brand new front-wheel drive system. The problem? The system was never designed to handle that much torque. Torque steer was brutal, yanking the steering wheel under hard acceleration. Car's weight distribution, heavily nose-biased, made handling unpredictable. The El Dorado felt more like a boat than a luxury coupe, with excessive body roll and numb, overboosted steering that gave the driver little control. Reliability issues were even worse. The front half shafts were prone to failure under stress, leading to expensive repairs. CV joints, critical for a front-wheel drive system, wore out quickly and often needed replacement. Uneven tire wear was another nightmare, with the massive V8 putting constant strain on the front wheels. Brake fade was severe due to the car's weight and front-heavy design. Long downhill stretches turned the already weak drum brakes into a liability. The 1967 El Dorado was also Cadillac's first attempt at unibody construction in decades, but early production models suffered from structural weakness. Creaks, rattles, and body flex were common complaints from owners. Compared to its traditional body-on-frame Cadillac siblings, the El Dorado felt fragile. While later versions of the El Dorado refined the concept, the 1967 model was a disaster. Cadillac pushed technology beyond what it was ready for, creating a car that was unreliable, poorly balanced, and difficult to maintain. It might have been a styling success, but as a driver's car, it was a complete failure. Tucked away at number 22 is the 1962 Chevrolet Impala Supersport 327 cubic inch V8. It was a car that sat between two worlds, neither here nor there in a world of muscle cars. As a transitional model, it wasn't the powerhouse it aimed to be, nor did it carry the legendary status of later Impala SS models. While it had potential, it ultimately fell short in both performance and reliability. The 327 cubic inch V8 engine, while capable of producing around 250 to 300 horsepower, wasn't enough to put the Impala Supersport on par with the emerging muscle cars of the early 1960s. For starters, it wasn't as fast or as aggressive as what was coming out of GM's performance-oriented divisions like Pontiac or Chevrolet's own later offerings. The power delivery was far too tame, and despite the V8 badge, it felt more like a heavy cruiser than a true muscle car. One of the key issues was the transmission. The Supersport models were equipped with the Power Glide or 3-speed manual, but neither was particularly impressive. The Power Glide automatic had a reputation for rough shifting and poor performance when it came to high-performance driving. Meanwhile, the manual transmission was sluggish and didn't pair well with the 327 cubic inch engine, leaving a lackluster driving experience overall. The 1962 Impala Supersport was also caught in a changing landscape. While GM was still trying to push the full-size Impala as a performance car, muscle car culture was rapidly shifting toward intermediates and compact cars that were lighter, more nimble, and better suited to the aggressive horsepower demands of the day. The shift towards smaller, more performance-focused cars made the larger, less agile Impala Supersport obsolete. So in 1963, the Supersport trim was refocused to the Chevel and Corvette, and the Impala Supersport went on hiatus. For all its flash, the 1961 to 1962 Impala Supersport 327 cubic inch V8 never truly earned its place in the Muscle Car Hall of Fame. It was a misstep during an era of rapid change, a car caught between full-size luxury and the roaring performance revolution that would soon define the muscle car era. Coming in at number 21, it is the 1964 Oldsmobile Jet Star 1. It was an ambitious attempt by Oldsmobile to create a budget-friendly version of its more luxurious Starfire, but it failed to make much of an impact. Marketed as a more affordable alternative to the Starfire, the Jet Star 1 simply couldn't stand up to its own siblings within GM's lineup, let alone to its competition. At the heart of the Jet Star 1 was a 394 cubic inch rocket V8 engine. While the engine was powerful on paper, it was a far cry from the performance enthusiasts expected from a muscle car. With just 310 horsepower, it felt underwhelming, especially when compared to the more powerful and more expensive options available from GM during the same era. It couldn't compete with the likes of the Pontiac GTO or the Chevrolet Chevel, both of which offered better performance and value. Styling also played a role in the Jet Star 1's downfall. While it tried to capture some of the aggressive muscle car looks of its more famous siblings, the Jet Star 1 ended up looking more like a bland and forgettable cruiser. Its lines were uninspired, and it didn't have the visual presence that would make buyers take notice. The final blow for the Jet Star 1, however, was its poor resale value. Buyers just weren't interested in it, and the lack of demand led to it being a flop in Oldsmobile's lineup. After only 1 year, GM discontinued the Jet Star 1, and its brief existence became nothing more than a footnote in automotive history. Oldsmobile's attempt to create an affordable muscle car with the Jet Star 1 fell short in almost every regard. Underpowered, lackluster styling, and minimal appeal to buyers. It was a forgettable failure that never had a chance in a rapidly evolving automotive market. Featured at number 20 is the 1962 Chevrolet Corvair Monza. The 1962 Chevrolet Corvair Monza Spyder Turbo was GM's ambitious foray into turbocharging in production cars, but it was a model that was ahead of its time in the worst way possible. While the Spyder was marketed as a high-performance version of the compact Corvair, its rushed engineering and lack of refinement made it more of a headache than a performance powerhouse. The Corvair Monza Spyder was equipped with a 150 horsepower turbocharged 2.4-liter flat-six engine, a significant boost over the standard Corvair's 80 horsepower engine. On paper, the turbocharged engine had potential, but the execution was severely flawed. One of the most notable issues was the extreme turbo lag, which made power delivery unpredictable, often catching drivers off guard when the turbo kicked in. The result was a car that could go from sluggish to dangerously fast in an instant, leading to poor handling dynamics, especially in cornering or during sudden acceleration. The engine wasn't the only problem. The car's cooling system was inadequate, leading to chronic overheating and oil leaks. Overheating wasn't just a nuisance, it was a major reliability issue, with many owners experiencing catastrophic engine failures due to excessive heat buildup. Detonation caused by improper tuning of the turbo system led to further engine damage, making repairs costly and frequent. On top of engine issues, the handling of the Monza Spyder was problematic. The early Corvairs were notorious for poor handling, and the addition of turbo power only made the car more prone to spinouts. The suspension was underdeveloped and couldn't handle the added power, resulting in a car that was difficult to control, particularly when pushing the limits. Despite its ambitious attempt at performance, the Corvair Monza Spider became a cautionary tale in automotive history. Its turbocharged engine, rushed development, and poor handling made it a flawed model that was quickly overshadowed by more refined and powerful cars. GM discontinued the Spider version in 1964, marking the end of the Corvair's turbocharged performance experiment. It's a car that, while historic, is often remembered for its mechanical missteps and inability to live up to its initial promises. At number 19 is the 1969 Pontiac Grand Prix SJ. It was a bold attempt by GM to create a high-performance luxury coupe that combined the opulence of a personal luxury car with the power of a muscle car. However, the early production models of the Grand Prix SJ were far from the polished final version. GM rushed the car into production, and the resulting vehicle faced significant quality control issues, leading to a troubled reputation in its early years. The Grand Prix SJ's ambitious design featured a long, sweeping hood and a luxurious interior, but it was not without its flaws. One of the most significant problems with the early models was poor build quality. Owners complained of rattling interiors, trim falling off, and various electrical problems. These issues plagued many Grand Prix SJ owners in the early production run, detracting from the car's otherwise impressive looks and features. While the SJ trim was supposed to offer a high-performance package, the initial models failed to live up to expectations due to these ongoing quality concerns. Additionally, the Grand Prix SJ's long hood, while aesthetically striking, proved to be a practical flaw. The extended front end made visibility from the driver's seat nearly impossible, leading to complaints from owners about the difficulty of parking and maneuvering the car, especially in tight spaces. The car size and weight also contributed to handling problems, making the vehicle less responsive than expected from a performance-oriented coupe. While the Pontiac Grand Prix SJ was meant to offer the best of both worlds, a balance of luxury and muscle, the early models were far from the ideal blend. GM addressed many of the issues in the 1970 model year, improving build quality and overall reliability. The 1969 model, with its early production flaws, is often seen as a half-baked attempt at combining luxury with performance, with its rushed build quality and handling problems leaving a sour taste for many buyers. The 1969 Grand Prix SJ's performance and luxury blend would only be fully realized with future iterations, leaving the early models as a forgettable misstep in Pontiac's otherwise successful lineup. Sliding in at number 18 is the 1963 to 1965 Pontiac Grand Prix. Pontiac had the right idea with the 1963 to 1965 Grand Prix. Big power, aggressive styling, and an upscale feel without stepping into Cadillac territory. But GM's decision to saddle it with the Slim Jim hydromatic transmission turned what could have been a proper high-performance luxury coupe into a frustrating owner experience. The Slim Jim, officially called the Roto-Hydromatic 10, was a disaster from the start. Designed as a lightweight, compact alternative to older, bulkier transmissions, it ended up being one of GM's worst engineering misfires. The problem wasn't just one thing, it was everything. The transmission slipped constantly, making acceleration unpredictable. Shifts were rough and erratic as well, often jerking the car at low speeds and lagging when you needed power. The unit was also incredibly fragile, with weak internals that wore out quickly under the torque of Pontiac's powerful 389 and 421 cubic inch V8s. Another major issue was heat buildup. The Slim Jim lacked efficient cooling, leading to overheating and premature failure. Fluid leaks were common, and because the transmission was poorly designed from the start, repairs were both expensive and often temporary. Many owners simply gave up and swapped in a more reliable GM Turbo Hydromatic once those became widely available. The drivetrain wasn't the only issue. The Grand Prix was a heavy car, and with its sluggish transmission, it often felt slower than it should have been, even with a 389 under the hood. Buyers expecting a true high-performance experience were left disappointed, while luxury buyers found it too coarse and unrefined compared to its competitors. Pontiac finally corrected the mistake in 1965, replacing the Slim Jim with a superior turbo-hydromatic 400. Sales picked up immediately, proving that the earlier models had been handicapped by their transmission woes. Today, the 1963 to 1964 Grand Prix models with the original Slim Jim are often avoided by collectors, who know they're more trouble than they're worth. The car itself wasn't a bad idea, but it was just ruined by one of GM's worst automatic transmissions ever. At number 17, we have the 1965 Chevrolet Malibu SS 283. Chevrolet's Malibu SS had all the right ingredients to be a true muscle car legend, but early 283 powered models saddled with the 2-speed Powerglide automatic fell flat. While the Super Sport package added sporty styling and bucket seats, it didn't bring the performance buyers expected. The problem wasn't just the engine, it was the entire powertrain holding the car back. The 283 cubic inch V8, rated at a modest 195 horsepower in base form, lacked the grunt needed to move the midsize Malibu with any real authority. It was a reliable engine, but reliability doesn't make up for sluggish acceleration. With an anemic single-barrel carburetor in lower trims and only mild performance gains with the 4-barrel option, the 283 struggled to deliver excitement. It didn't help that Chevrolet's competitors were already offering more powerful small blocks and even some big block options in the same price range. The real Achilles heel, though, was the Powerglide transmission. Originally designed for economy cars, this outdated 2-speed automatic was a relic from an era when smoothness mattered more than speed. In a performance car, it was a disaster. The wide gear spacing meant sluggish launches and lackluster mid-range acceleration. Off the line, the 283 Powerglide combo felt gutless compared to manually equipped models or those with the later Turbo Hydromatic 350. The Powerglide's slow, rubbery shifts robbed the engine of what little power it had, making the car feel heavy and unresponsive. Handling wasn't much better. With vague steering, soft suspension, and drum brakes all around, the Malibu SS 283 was more about appearances than performance. By 1965, Chevrolet had realized its mistake, and the later SS 396 models rendered the 283 Powerglide combination completely obsolete. Buyers wanted real muscle, and this version of the Malibu SS simply didn't deliver. Today, these early SS models are largely forgotten, overshadowed by the later big block variants that cemented the Malibu's place in muscle car history. While they looked the part, the 283 Powerglide models were all show and no go. A half-baked attempt at performance that never lived up to the hype. The number 16 slot goes to the 1965 to 1966 Oldsmobile 98. It was supposed to be a top-tier luxury cruiser, but early models fitted with the first-generation Turbo Hydromatic 400 transmission turned it into a mechanical headache. Oldsmobile, like the rest of GM, was eager to phase out older automatics in favor of the new 3-speed TH400. Unfortunately, rushing into market meant early adopters paid the price. On paper, the TH400 was an advanced transmission, offering smoother shifts and better torque multiplication than the aging Jetaway and Slim Jim automatics. In reality, however, the first versions were plagued with teething issues. Weak planetary gear sets couldn't handle the torque from Oldsmobile's massive 425 cubic inch V8, leading to premature failures. Faulty valve bodies caused erratic shifting, with some cars refusing to shift out of second gear or slipping unpredictably. The transmission also suffered from fluid foaming issues, which resulted in overheating and breakdowns. As if that wasn't enough, the car itself was a handful. The 425 V8 was a thirsty beast, guzzling fuel at an alarming rate. Combined with the 98's massive size and soft, wallowing suspension, it drove more like a boat than a luxury sedan. Braking was another issue. Despite weighing over 4,500 pounds, it relied on drum brakes, which quickly faded under stress. Sales suffered as reliability complaints rolled in, and many owners either had the TH400 rebuilt or swapped in a more dependable transmission. By 1967, GM had addressed most of the TH400's early flaws, but the damage was done. The 66 Oldsmobile 98 had already earned a reputation for being more trouble than it was worth, with buyers opting for Cadillacs or even Buicks instead. Coming in at number 15 is the 1961 Buick Lasaber 215 aluminum V8. Buick took a big gamble with the 215 cubic inch aluminum V8, and it backfired in spectacular fashion. Designed to be lightweight and fuel efficient, the engine instead became a maintenance nightmare. Overheating was common, and the soft aluminum construction made things worse. Cylinder heads warped, head gaskets failed, and coolant passages corroded, turning even low-mileage engines into ticking time bombs. Oil consumption was another disaster. These engines burned oil at an alarming rate, often fouling spark plugs and leading to rough running. Some owners reported oil loss so severe that the engine would seize if they didn't constantly check and top it off. Mechanics despised working on the 215, as the aluminum block was easy to strip during repairs, making even routine maintenance risky. On the road, the Lasaber was sluggish compared to its competition. The small displacement V8 struggled to move the hefty Buick's weight, making acceleration underwhelming. The 2-speed Dynaflow automatic transmission didn't help matters, sapping power and making the car feel even more sluggish. Customers expecting the usual Buick smoothness and reliability were instead met with a car that was neither fast nor dependable. Buick realized its mistake and quickly abandoned the aluminum V8 after 1963, selling the design to Rover, who spent decades refining it into a durable power plant. But for the early Lasaber, the damage was already done. These models became notorious for their unreliability, leading many to be scrapped before reaching high mileage. Finding a surviving 215-powered Lasaber today is rare, and restoring one is nearly impossible due to the scarcity of working engines. This was one of Buick's biggest missteps of the early 1960s, an innovative idea that arrived before the technology was ready, leaving customers frustrated and dealership service bays filled with problem-ridden engines. Next, at number 14 is the 1963 Oldsmobile Starfire. It was supposed to be a high-end personal luxury coupe with muscle car performance, but it failed on both fronts. Positioned above the Chevrolet Impala SS and below the Cadillac Coupe de Ville, it struggled to find an audience. It was too heavy to be a true performance car, too mechanically flawed to be a serious luxury offering, and too expensive for what it delivered. Power came from a 394 cubic inch rocket V8 producing 345 horsepower, but their performance didn't live up to expectations. The engine was notorious for oil leaks, worn out valve seals, and excessive carbon buildup, which hurt reliability. The Jetaway automatic transmission was sluggish and prone to overheating, further dulling performance. At over 4,300 pounds, the Starfire was slow off the line and lacked the handling to be a real competitor to lighter, more refined alternatives. Step inside, Oldsmobile attempted to justify the price with bucket seats, brushed aluminum trim, and a center console, but the quality fell short. The materials wore out quickly, interior rattles were common, and the power accessories were unreliable. The Cadillac Series 62 was a better luxury buy, while the Pontiac Grand Prix and Buick Riviera offered more excitement for the money. The biggest issue was that the Starfire didn't stand out in any category. It wasn't fast enough to be a muscle car, wasn't luxurious enough to justify its premium pricing, and didn't have the brand prestige to compete with Cadillac or Lincoln. Sales fell hard, and by 1964, Oldsmobile had to redesign the Starfire in an attempt to revive interest. As far as GM's worst efforts of the 60s go, the 1963 Oldsmobile Starfire earns its place for being overpriced, underperforming, and ultimately forgettable. Slotting into the number 13 position is the 1966 Chevrolet Corvair Corsa Turbo. It was GM's last attempt to position the Corvair as a legitimate performance car, but it only magnified the flaws that plagued the model from the beginning. While the Corsa trim added a more aggressive look and the promise of added power, the car's fundamental design problems made it a disaster. Under the rear deck lid, the Corsa Turbo housed a 180 horsepower air-cooled flat six with a single-side draft carburetor feeding a turbocharger. On paper, this setup should have made the Corvair a worthy competitor to contemporary muscle cars. In reality, it was an unreliable mess. Severe turbo lag made power delivery unpredictable, and the air-cooled engine struggled with heat management. Overheating, detonation, and drop valve seats were common, leading to premature engine failure. The Corvair's swing axle suspension remained largely unchanged, continuing the car's reputation for snap oversteer. While GM made minor tweaks in an attempt to improve stability, the Corvair still had a tendency to lose control under hard cornering. The car's lightweight rear and unpredictable handling characteristics made it difficult to drive at the limit, especially for owners expecting a refined performance machine. Sales of the Corsa Turbo plummeted as buyers lost interest in GM's flawed experiment. By 1967, the Corvair was effectively finished, overshadowed by the growing popularity of traditional muscle cars with front-engine, rear-drive layouts